Good morning. Good morning. My name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Sunday school class where we're going through the Old Testament. On Wednesdays, I go through the New Testament. We start in the book of Genesis, Exodus. I'm just making up words. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. We're in the book of Numbers. We'll be in Deuteronomy soon. We're already at Numbers chapter 20. So, in these first five books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, were written for the children of Israel who were in the wilderness to kind of explain how they got there and how they were going to get out. Book of Genesis explains the sin problem, but mostly introduces Abraham, their father. Abraham, the father of Isaac. Abraham's also the father of Ishmael. Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. And so all of Ishmael's descendants come from Abraham. All of Esau's descendants come from Abraham. Jacob's descendants come from Abraham. And so there are three major religions today that all trace their roots back to Abraham. So God's introducing Abraham and how the descendants of Jacob, who God later changed his name to Israel, how they ended up in Egypt, how they were there for 200 years, and in the book of Exodus. So Genesis explains how they got there. Book of Exodus explains how they got out. In Leviticus, God is having to re-educate them because they have been serving Egyptian gods for 200 years. And so he's explaining to them, in order for me to preserve you, um, I've got to give you these rules. Otherwise, you're all going to kill each other or kill yourselves, or I'm going to have to kill you because you're messing up so badly. So so let me give you priests who are Levites, and the book of Leviticus is written to the priests. It's their instruction manual. These are the laws that the people need to follow in order to be preserved alive. Now, he had told Abraham, through you, I am going to, first, I'm going to make of you a mighty nation, but I'm going to reach the rest of the world. Through you, I'm going to bless the rest of the world. So at that time, every nation on earth was worshiping gods that they had made up. But he says, Abraham, I'm the one true God. So I'm going to bless you and bless your progeny, your children, all the generations that come after you. So people will have to look at you and go, what's going on with that? Their God must be the real God. That's how the children of Israel ended up in Egypt in the first place. One of Jacob's sons, one of Israel's sons, Joseph, ended up in Egypt, and he becomes like the viceroy, the vice president, the vice whatever in Egypt. And through God, he was able to predict this big famine that was going to hit that entire region. And he knew about it in advance and was able to save up food and have enough food to feed the world, or at least the known world in that region. And so people would come and, how did Egypt know? How did they know that this famine was going to hit? Their God must be the true God, right? So that's the whole plan, is I'm going to do things through these people that will help the world see that I'm the only true God. They're worshiping fake gods. And then through them, I'm going to bring the Messiah that will solve the sin problem. Because we have two problems. You got to believe in me. And secondly, the sin problem has to be solved. And so through these people, I'm going to bring the Messiah. So when they get to the book of Leviticus, it's like, I've got to preserve you alive because I've got this plan that through you, I'm going to bring the Messiah. So um, in the book of Numbers, God says, well, now it's time to go back to Israel. You've been in Egypt all this time. You're in the Saudi Arabia wilderness. Now we're going to go back into Israel. And they all said, nope, we're not going to do it because we don't trust you that much. There are giants in the land. We're going to be defeated. Because they're just meeting this God. For 200 years, they've been serving Egyptian gods. They're just meeting this God. So it says, okay, you need a 40-year period in the wilderness. All of you unbelievers who are 40 or 80 now, you'll be 80 to 120 years old. You'll pass away. But the generation that grows up in the wilderness who sees my works every day, you'll believe me better. And I'll take that generation in to the promised land, into the land that I promised Abraham. So here we are in the book of Numbers, and it's been 40 years. So a couple chapters ago, we meet them just as they refuse to go in, and God says, this generation, you're going to wander in the wilderness 40 years. A chapter later, he skips ahead 40 years, and here we are. So they're about ready to go. They're just a couple months away or less from going into the wilderness. Moses is still alive, but at this point he's 120 because it's been 40 years he's been in the desert. So and God had just told him, just in the previous verses in Numbers chapter 20, Moses at 120, you're not going to be leading the children of Israel back to the promised land. I've chosen someone else to do that. But now they're ready to go. They've got to make it back. So Saudi Arabia, that region, actually, they're near Lebanon. Lebanon's in the news today. Israel's bombing Hezbollah, and Hezbollah's this group, terrorist group that's in Lebanon. Lebanon's right next to Israel on the east side, right? And that's where the children of Israel were. They're like east of Lebanon. So they've got to go west. They've got to go through the mountains of Lebanon and then come into Israel. So I see the United States, and I know that New York and all those are on the East Coast, and they're like in the Atlantic Ocean, and they've got to go. They got to go. They're heading west just to hit the east part. So if you're in the Atlantic Ocean, you're heading west. Now you're on the East Coast, and now you keep going farther west, and so that's what they've got to do. They've got to go through Lebanon in order to get back to the border of Israel. So it says Moses sent messengers because you got to send messengers to the people who are there, whose territory you're going to be passing through. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 2, and again, Deuteronomy simply summarizes everything that's happened. Deuteronomy is just the summary with extra detail of everything that happened. So in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 2, it says, and the Lord spoke to me saying, so this is Moses summing up everything. You have skirted this mountain long enough. Turn, you got to go north and then that way. Turn northward and command the people, saying, you are about to pass through the territory of your brethren, the descendants of Esau. So again, Abraham had Isaac. Isaac has twin sons, Jacob and Esau. Esau moved into this territory that's east of present-day Israel. He basically moved into Lebanon, that area, and that's where he set up camp. So they're going to have to go through Esau's territory in order to get to Israel. You're about to pass through the territory of your brethren, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir, S-E-I-R. So that's the name of basically where Lebanon is today. That's the older name of it. And they will be afraid of you. Therefore, watch yourselves carefully. So we're going to go back, like, why are they afraid of them? Watch yourself carefully. Do not meddle with them, for I will not give you any of their land. Nope, not so much as one footstep, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. So Lebanon belongs to them. That all that territory east of Israel, that's theirs. He says, and God says, I gave it to them. It's not like they took it and they were evil and we need to fight with them, and don't be fighting with them. Don't fight with them. I'm not going to give you any of their land. Don't meddle with them. Okay, because I've given it to them. So just send the message. But you got to go through this mountainous territory in order to get that, and see if they will let you pass through their land. So Moses sent a message from Kadesh. So that's where they were in. They were kind of south. They had to go up north and then travel west to go into Israel. So that's where Kadesh is. Kadesh is where they were initially, um, where they camped, and then they sent out spies. Now it's okay to send 12 people. You can't send 1,000,000 people through land, but you can send 12 spies. So the 12 spies went, and then they went into Israel and came back and said, "No, we can't do it." And all the people believed the 12 spies instead of believing God. But now that there's 1,000,000 of you, they'll notice you. You can't hide. So they're going to notice you. So you got to send messengers and say and warn them and say, "Hey, we're coming through." Um, so when did they first get to Kadesh? Okay, so I'm sorry. So they got to Kadesh. The spies went in. The spies came back to Kadesh, which was kind of south, and said, "We can't do it." So Jesus. So God says, "Okay, you're going to wander around the wilderness for 40 years. You can wander around this desert until that generation that didn't believe me is gone." So they've just kind of been wandering. Now they're back at Kadesh, where they've got now they've got to go through. So they got there after wandering for 40 years. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 1, at the beginning of this chapter, it says, "Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month." So Kadesh has the wilderness of Zin and the wilderness of Paran, but the whole area is called Kadesh. They came in there in the first month of this 40th year, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Also in the wilderness of in the same area, that's when Moses strikes the rock instead of just speaking to it like God said. And God says to Moses, "This is kind of why I can't send you in. This is just an example of your whole life. One mistake, God doesn't eliminate you. Oh, sorry, you did that one thing." He'll use that one mistake as an example of kind of a pattern in your life and say, "This is kind of who you are, and this is why I'm using you in this way." It's not like God didn't use Moses. He had to pastor those people for 40 years in the wilderness. He used Moses to part the Red Sea and to get the children of Israel out of Egypt in the first place. So it's not like your life is just nothing because you don't get to take them in. He's 120. So, but this is why I can't have you take them in, because I need someone who won't just take it upon themselves, which Moses would do a lot. He would just take it on himself to issue out punishment, issue out judgment. He killed that Egyptian back when he was 40 years old, killed an Egyptian because he didn't like what the Egyptian was doing. So he broke the Ten Commandments. Moses just sometimes doesn't care what God thinks. He's mad, he's upset, he's going to do something about it. And says, "Well, this is why I can't use you in this next position, because you got this temper." So it says they got there in the first month of the year. The first month is around March. In Numbers chapter 33, because we just measure how long they're in Kadesh in year 40, Numbers chapter 33, verse 37, it says, "They moved from Kadesh and camped out in Mount Hor on the boundary of the land of Edom." So the land of Edom is where Esau lives. So they're now on their way. It says, "Then Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor, Hor, at the command of the Lord, and died there in the 40th year." So we're in year 40, "as the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt on the first day of the fifth month." So they got to Kadesh in the first month. Now it's the fifth month, and they're finally moving. So when they first got there, so they're there about 4 months, and they're sending messages out saying, "Hey, we got to pass through your land," and hey, and finally in the fifth month, they're on the move. So they sent a message to, it says, the king of Edom, and Edom and Seir are the same place. Edom is another name that Esau had. So let's go back, because the relationship between Jacob and Esau, And again, Esau's other name was Edom. The relationship between Jacob and Esau was never really great. And it informs 200 years later when the children of Jacob, or children of Israel, so Jacob's name is changed to Israel, Esau's name is changed to Edom. So now they're there, Israel versus Edom. They're still carrying those same rivalries, these two people. So now Israel's asking for help of Edom, Jacob asking help of Esau, and we'll see how they respond. But let's review the relationship because we should be able to predict what's going to happen just by reviewing. So in Genesis chapter 25, verse 21, so we're just reviewing the relationship. It says, now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived, Abraham, Isaac. So, but the children, so she's got twins in her, struggled together within her, and she said, if all is well, why am I like this? Why is this fight going on in my belly? So even when they were inside the womb, they're fighting. So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, two nations are in your womb, Israel and Edom. They're in your womb. Two people shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed, there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau, which means red, right? So Esau came up first, but the prophecy was that the older would serve the younger. In their culture, God never said in his word, you must give the firstborn all things. Because in many situations in the Bible, the firstborn did not get all things. That was not some law, that was their tradition. And sometimes we look at Jewish traditions and think it was God's law. No, that was just a tradition. David was not the firstborn in his family, he was the youngest. Joseph was the second youngest. Whatever his name is, Israel, Jacob, he was the youngest. So it was just the Jewish tradition that the oldest would inherit everything. But that's God gave it to the person that he felt that he knew would do the most with it, right? So it didn't matter if you were the oldest. If you were the oldest and you were going to do the most with it, fine. If you were the youngest, Moses was the youngest in his family. Aaron was older than him. Miriam was older than him. So kind of odd. It was not an given that if you're the oldest, God used you. So Esau comes out first, and the prophecy had been given, the older is going to serve the younger. And it says, afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. So even just coming out of the womb, this younger baby wanted to come out first, took a hold of his heel, like, no, I want to be first. Not knowing the prophecy, you don't need to be first. God's already got a plan for you. Okay. So Isaac was 6 years old when she bore them. Now, Genesis chapter 27. Rebecca, even though the prophecy was that the older was going to serve the younger, and I'm going to make a mighty nation out of the younger, she didn't believe it. She didn't trust it. So she came to her younger son. She loved the younger son. The dad loved the older son. The older son was macho, and the younger son was not. So he was kind of a mama's boy, and then the older was a daddy's boy. That's fine. But he says, she comes to him and says, we got to have a plan so that you can get the blessing, because it was their tradition to give the blessing to the older son. But you can give the blessing to the older son. You can give everything to the older son. God still has a plan for the younger son. So we get freaked out like, you got my position, or I was supposed to be promoted to that office. Okay, that person can be promoted to that office. God's still going to use the one he's decided to use. So we don't have to come up with a plan to go around somebody, or that doesn't mess up God. God doesn't go, oh man, I was going to use you, but I didn't realize that was going to happen. I didn't know they were going to promote Albert. I was going to. God doesn't get confused. Like, I already got plans for you. So man can do what he wants. God is still going to work his plans. But Rebecca didn't know that. So they trick the father, who old and blind by this time. He's about 100, to be honest, at this point, because he was 60 when they were born. And this is about 35, 40 years later. So he's going blind. And they said, let's fool him. Your brother's all hairy and everything. Put on clothes, bare skin, and like your brother, and go get the brother's blessing. So Jacob goes and says, yes, I'm Esau. Bless me. So the father blesses him. So in Genesis chapter 27, verse 35, Esau finds out that Jacob got his blessing. Now he's mad naturally. But he said, in 20, Genesis 27:35, Isaac says to Esau, your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing. Well, he took away the blessing that Isaac could give him, but he didn't take away whatever God had for him. Nobody can take the blessing God has for you. Nobody can take your blessing. God isn't confused and like, oh man, I meant to give it to you, but that person took your blessing. Whatever God has for you is yours. No one can take it away. So, but this is what the father says, because he's no biblical scholar. Um, he's taken away your blessing. So naturally Esau's upset. Oh no, I've lost my blessing. Verse 38. And I'm just going over this because before they were born, God already said, here's the plan for these two brothers, these twins. He already had a plan. So, verse 38 of Genesis 27. And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, oh my father. So Esau lifted up his voice and he wept. Oh no, Jacob took my blessing. So I'm mad at Jacob. And this is the story that's passed down to Esau's kids and their kids and that Jacob and his family, they took what is yours. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth and of the dew from heaven above. It's not like God's going to forsake you, but by your sword you shall live, because that's who Esau was. He was a macho guy. By your sword you shall live, but you shall serve your brother. And it shall come to pass when you become restless that you shall break his yoke from your neck. So at a certain point, you will no longer have to serve him. It'll be over. But for a while, you'll be serving your brother, meaning your people, your family. Okay, but once you become like I can't take this anymore, then and then you'll be on your own. You'll have your own thing. So, verse 41 says, so Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father at hand, like he's going to die soon, and then I will kill my brother Jacob. So believing, and again, our life is made up of what we believe, unfortunately. Believing that he had lost out, because sometimes people are in anger and bitter because they believe that person took what's mine and that other people cannot mess you up. No one can take from you what God has for you. But if you believe that, you're going to be angry and stressed. Now, your believing that doesn't make you lose your blessing. It just makes you stressed and angry the whole time, and you don't appreciate your blessing because you think you're supposed to have that. And so you're unsatisfied with your life because you think, I'm supposed to have that. That person took what I'm supposed to have, and you're not able to look and enjoy what you do have. So Esau's upset at Jacob and Esau's descendants, the Edomites, because Esau changed his name to Edom. Jacob changed his name to Israel, or God changed both their names. So the Edomites are mad at Israel. Now, in Genesis 33, after Jacob flees, because his parents come to him and said, Esau's about to kill you. You need to get out of here. He goes up north, comes back with 4 wives and 12 kids. So he's got 4 wives and 12 kids. And now Esau, who hasn't seen him in 20 years, Esau's coming to meet him. They are in Esau's territory. They're up in Syria. Jacob flees to Syria, which is right above Israel. When he comes back, he doesn't come straight back down through Israel. He actually comes back down through everything that's in the east of Israel, through the area that's Lebanon and Jordan. So he's going to run into his brother. So it says, now Jacob lifted his eyes. This is Genesis 33, verse 1. Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming. Hadn't seen him in 20 years. And with him were 400 men. Like, oh, he's going to kill me because he vowed to kill him 20 years ago. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants because he had kids by all four of these women. Divided them up. And then he says, well, I'll put this group first so that Esau can kill those kids. Then he'll kill this set of kids. Then he can kill Leah's kids. And Leah's kids included the Levites and Judah and Jesus' descent. You can kill them next. And then the kids that I really like, Joseph and Benjamin, uh, they'll stay alive. Or at least he'll kill them last. So, but that's not what happened because Esau wasn't coming there to kill them. In verse 4 of Genesis 33, it says, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now they wept because Jacob has been afraid of his brother Esau for 20 years. That's why he ran away in the first place. And Esau wept because their father was dead, their mother was dead. This is his only family. And, oh, I'm good to see my brother again. So they embrace. In verse 12 of Genesis 33, it says, then Esau said, let us take our journey. Let's go back. I want to take you down to my place in Lebanon. It's fantastic. You'll love it. It wasn't called Lebanon at the time. It's called Edom. But Jacob, he says, so I'll go before you. You just follow me. Verse 13. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are weak. I've got 12 kids. And the flocks and herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Like if you go too fast, we won't be able to catch up with you. My flocks are already weak. And if you drive them too fast, they'll just faint and die right there. So he's giving excuses because he's afraid to go back with Esau. He's not just saying the truth. Like, I'm still scared of you. Even though you embrace me and hug me right now, when I get back to your house, you might kill me there. So he's making excuses, but he's not saying the truth out loud. So, and if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Please let my Lord go on. This is verse 14. Go on ahead before his servants, and I will lead slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure, until I come to my Lord in Seir, which again is Edom. So I'll meet you. Go ahead. So he says, okay. Verse 16. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Did Jacob follow him? No, because Jacob is a liar and had been a liar his whole life. Verse 17, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth. He didn't go down to Edom. So Esau does this big favor of, I'm going to forgive you, brother. I'm inviting you down to my house, even though you took my inheritance, which is what I'm going to teach my kids, that what you have, I should have had. Here's your chance to make amends and follow me. And Jacob says, I'll follow you, and never shows up. Never showed up, ever. Verse 17, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, made booths for his livestock, and therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. And then he went to Shechem. Then he finally goes into Israel, because again, he's east of Israel, in that place, which is Lebanon today and Jordan. He crosses over and never showed up. Never sent word, nothing. Then his family ends up going down to Egypt and staying in Egypt for 200 years. So all that Esau, who are the Edomites, know of Jacob is that he took his inheritance, which again, whatever God has for you is yours. Nobody can take it. But this is the stories being passed down. He took your blessing. He took everything that we should have had. And then he lied and said, okay, I'm following you. I'll be right there. Never showed up. Now, 200 years later, they send a message and say, hey, we need your help. Would you mind, do you mind helping us? Because here we are in the wilderness. And is that a problem? Now, just a little bit more about Esau. The parents had been told by God, thank you. The parents had been told by God, I don't marry any Canaanites. The lineage of Canaan is cursed, not the lineage of Ham. Canaan's father was Ham. Ham had like 6 kids. One of had like Ham's. So Noah has 3 sons, right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From Shem comes Abraham's finding. The Shemites, the Semites, comes Abraham's brood. Then there's Ham's group. His oldest son was Mizraim, which became Egypt. Then he had another son who founded Ethiopia, another son who founded Iran, another one founded Iraq. No, he didn't found Iran. That came out of Japheth's thing. But he founded Iraq, where Babylon was, Nigeria. So a lot of the major nations in Africa and in the Middle East. But the Canaanites, his youngest son, Canaan, they founded what is today Israel, and that's where they lived. Um, but they were cursed, just that one group, because and so from them is from Canaanites, from Canaan's, Ham's youngest son, comes Sodom and Gomorrah and Tyre and Sidon and a lot of places that were cursed, that just were so, and they were cursed because of their idol worship that was passed down, and and their excessive sin and all that. So God had said, don't marry a Canaanite because they will lead you into horrible sin. That group is just cursed, starting with Canaan himself. Canaan, Ham's youngest son, when Noah woke up from his drunken sleep, first thing he looked, it says he looked at what happened to him and said, cursed be Canaan, because Canaan did something to him while he was sleeping. Uh, and he could tell. Canaan told Ham about Noah's nakedness. Ham tells his brothers, and they go in and they cover their father's nakedness because their father's naked and drunk right after they got off the ark. Because, of course, they've been in that ark for a long time, floating in the water. The whole world's flooded. They made it safe. Noah's like, I got to get a drink. Then I'm going to bed. And so they go in and they cover him. However, Canaan went in and did something. We don't know. All we know is when Moses woke up, Moses, help me, Jesus. When Noah woke up, Noah said, cursed be Canaan, and because he did something. Something's wrong with that boy. And Canaan passes whatever that is onto his kids. So Sodom, Gomorrah, and all that stuff, that comes through the line of Canaan. So God says, do not marry a Canaanite. You're going to get in trouble. You'll be so sad if you do. So that's why uh, Isaac sent Jacob up north to marry his cousin, Rebecca. Go live with your uncle Laban and marry one of his kids, but do not marry a Canaanite. He said the same thing to Esau. And Esau said, I'm going to go ahead and marry a Canaanite. I don't care what you say. And I'm going to live over here on the other side of the Jordan. So Esau's an interesting person, right? But again, he's bitter against his twin brother Jacob because he feels like Jacob took everything that should have been his. And then, like I said, when he finally makes up to his brother and invites his brother to his home, Jacob never shows up. 200 years later, they want to pass through the Edomites' land. And again, the Edomites are the descendants of Esau. Can we pass through your land? Now, I just want to reiterate what God said to them in Deuteronomy. He says, you're about to pass through the territory of your brother, the descendants of Esau. He said, they will be afraid of you. Because why? Because of all the stories they've heard for 200 years. He says, therefore, watch yourselves carefully, but do not meddle with them. For I will not give you any of their land. No, not so much as one footstep, because I've given that whole area to Esau as a possession. Lebanon is theirs. That whole area is theirs. Don't mess with them. Is there messing going on today? Yes. Is it going well? No, it's not ever going to go well. God's not going to bless it or help because he said, like, leave them alone. Now, if they're fooling with you, then you might have to retaliate, but it's not ever going to end up well. So, he sends a message to his brother, the Edomites, uh, and it says, "Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardships that have befallen." So he's going to give him a good story because it's been 200 years. We were supposed to show up 200 years ago. We never showed up, but we're showing up now. That's not a problem, is it? So you know all the hardship that has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt and we dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers. This is Numbers chapter 15. And when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent the angel and brought us up out of Egypt. Now here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please let us pass through your country. And we will not pass through the fields or vineyards, nor will we drink water from wells. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand or to the left until we just want to pass through. We're not going to touch anything. We promise you. Numbers chapter 20, verse 18. Then Edom said to him, "You shall not pass through my land, lest I come out against you with the sword. I will kill you if you pass through." Are they still holding a grudge? Yes. So it's like, nope. I know you need to pass through. You need to come up north in order to go. You have to find some other way. You'll have to find some. No, won't. Not gonna let you come through. Now, at the same time, in the book of Judges, they sent out. It tells us that they sent out messages to a couple different places. So in Judges chapter 11, verse 17, it says, "Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, 'Please let me pass through your land.' But the king of Edom would not heed. And in like manner, they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel remained in Kadesh. That's why they're there for 4 or 5 months. They got there in the first month. It's now the 5th month, and they don't want to fight anybody. They just want to go through. Moab, who are those? The Moabites. And again, so this is like southern Lebanon, Jordan, because again, Lebanon and Jordan are the two countries east of Israel. And so Moab and Edom are formed what would be modern day Lebanon and Jordan. So Moab, they're the descendants of Lot. And Lot had the chance to live with Abraham, but Lot chose to live in Sodom and Gomorrah and said, I'm gonna live down there. That looks nice. What could happen? So they go down and they live there, and then God judges Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot comes out with just his wife, who turns a pillar of salt, and his 2 daughters, and they think they turn and they see everything explode, and they think the world is ended. So his daughters get the father drunk, and they have kids by him because they think we're the last people on earth. They're living in a cave because, again, they had the opportunity to go back to Abraham. The daughters don't know Abraham. Lot knows Abraham, but Lot's embarrassed because he chose so poorly when Abraham gave him the choice of where do you want to go? I'm gonna go down there. I'm choosing the best place. Screw you, Abraham. Sodom and Gomorrah, that's the best place to go. So he's so embarrassed that when he leaves, he could have gone up to Abraham, but instead he goes to live in a cave. So his daughters think, oh my God, the world ended. So one of the daughters names her son Moab. And so that's where they're living. They're living east of Israel. So you got the Moabites and the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, who have a big story to tell, and then the descendants of Lot. Both of them are still mad at Israel. They're still mad at those people, and they both have reasons and different various stories that they've told. So this is in Numbers 20. They're talking about here's how Edom responded, but we know that the Moabites responded too. They still got to get through though, so something's going to have to happen. We'll read who gave in or who did what, because you've got both these sets of people that are mad at the Israelites. And the Israelites are thinking, why are they so mad at us? We've been in Egypt for 200 years. I don't get it. But it's because these ancient things that these people have never forgotten. We don't forget what happened. Even, and that's the same thing with the fighting that's going on today. Why are they fighting so well? Because of something that happened 50 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 800 years ago. They've not forgotten, and they're still fighting those same wars. Are you still fighting the same wars of your fathers and grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers? Are you mad at people that you shouldn't be mad at because you're still fighting in this ancient war? Anyway, so Edom said, no, you can't come through our land. Verse 19, so the children of Israel said to him, we will go by the highway. And if I or my livestock drink any of your water accidentally, oops, then I will pay for it. But let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. Then he says in response, you shall not pass through. Sorry, you've asked twice, and twice I'm saying no. So Edom came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. Like, let me send my army out just to show you how mad I still am at you. Thus, Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory. So Israel turned away from him. Like, okay, us 1 million of us, let's go back, and we're gonna have to find another way because it's time to get to the promised land. We're stuck. So while they're waiting to figure out a different, and we'll finish the chapter 20 today. While they're waiting to figure out a different way, like how are we going to go back? Here's what happens in Numbers chapter 20, verse 22. Now the children of Israel, the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor, and I'd read this earlier. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor, and I bet there's a, well, okay, it's what it is, Hor, Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. So at the beginning of this chapter, Miriam passed away. Miriam's the oldest. She, and then maybe 3 or 4 years later, Aaron was born, and then maybe 3 years after that, Moses is born. Moses is born and put in the little basket and put in the river, and they don't really know him. They don't really see him till 80 years later. Miriam and Aaron are very close because they grew up together. Moses did not grow up with them, but they're older than him. So Miriam passes away first, not because God is mad at her, but because she's 127. Now he's saying it's time for Aaron to be gathered to his people. Verse 24, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I've given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. So he has the same sort of problem that Moses had. Now, Aaron didn't have a anger problem. Aaron had a I follow and do what everybody else says problem. For example, when Moses went up on the mountain with God to get the Ten Commandments, the people came to Aaron and said, make us an idol so we can go back to Egypt. And Aaron said, okay. So when Moses is yelling at God, the people, and saying, yes, you scoundrels, I'm going to have to strike this rock and I'm going to bring water out because you're so rebellious, which is, God said none of that. God said the opposite of that. Aaron's right there with him. Yeah, what he said. Yeah, that's right. So you're part of the rebellion. I can't trust you, Aaron, either. So you rebelled at the water of Meribah. This is your personality. Not that you are an instigator, but you're a follower of bad. If somebody's doing bad, you follow it. So neither one of you can go in. So verse 25 says, take Aaron, and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son. For Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. So he's passing the torch to his son. Eleazar's the next high priest. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 27, it says, so Moses did just as the Lord commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And they're doing this again in the interim while they're waiting to figure out how are we going to get into Israel? How are we going to get into Canaan land, into the promised land, if no one will let us pass through the territory without trying to fight us? So while they're waiting, they go up to Mount Hor, and in the sight of all the congregation, so everybody sees them go up, it says, Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. No one sees him die, but they know that that's why he's going up there to do. And so he dies there on the top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. In Numbers chapter 33, verse 39, it says, Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor. So it's okay. He was 123. He's 3 years older than Moses. Miriam, like I said, is like 127. She's 7 years older than Moses. Now, here's the problem. They probably did not bury Aaron. God probably buried Aaron. Because in Numbers chapter 19, verse 11, it says, he who touches the dead body of anyone shall be unclean 7 days. So they may not have buried his body. They may have done this, God may have done a supernatural thing, which is the same thing he did with Moses. Excuse me. We know that in Deuteronomy chapter 34, when it was Moses' time, verse 5, it says, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. So that's a little hint, because remember, two people, the Edomites and the Moabites, both said, no, you can't come through here. Edomites are the descendants of Esau, and the Moabites are the descendants of Lot. But we know that Moses died there in the land of Moab. So that's kind of a hint as to who gave in. And okay, so according to the word of the Lord, Deuteronomy 34:6, and he buried him, God, buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his grave to this day. So Moses went up by himself, never came back. We know in Jude it says something about Michael contended with the devil over the body of Moses. Uh, and when Moses died, we'll go into that. So it might have been the same thing. Maybe God buried Aaron, because it doesn't say, and they came down and they were unclean for 7 days. So maybe it's a similar thing. Here's the last verse, Numbers chapter 20, verse 29. And now when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, meaning only Moses and Eleazar came back down the mountain, it says all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. So that was the period of mourning at that time. They kind of got that from the Egyptians. The Egyptians would mourn for 70 days. That wasn't what they showed up with. God didn't say to them, you must mourn for 30 days. There are a lot of traditions that the Jews had that were just their traditions. It's not, the Bible didn't stipulate you must mourn for this period of time. But they were in Egypt for 200 years, and so they learned certain things. And so they mourned for 30 days, for a full month. So we know they got there in the first month. In the 5th month, he died. So now we're to the 6th month, and they're still going to be trying to figure out how do we get to Israel, because neither the Moabites nor the Edomites are going to let us through without a fight. And so we'll go there next week, Numbers chapter 21. We'll investigate to see what happened. And some of you know the stories of Balaam and Balak and all that. It's very interesting. So we'll get there. So thank you so much for listening. On Wednesday, I'm in the book of Luke. And we're going through the New Testament and hopefully explaining it in a way that it makes it interesting for you. So I'm ending my video here. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. All right, bye-bye.